My niece pushed me into the lake and laughed. "Don't pretend, old hag, it's just water." So I let her sink in regret, permanently. The water surged into my mouth and nostrils like a betrayal I never saw coming. One second I was standing by the edge of the lake, watching the stillness of the water dance under the last light of dusk. The next, I was weightless, falling forward with a push that was small in force but enormous in meaning. I did not hear the splash so much as feel it from the inside. The lake swallowed me whole. As my body sank, my mind clung to the voice that delivered the final insult before gravity did the rest. "Do not pretend, old hag, it's just water," I flailed. "I am not a strong swimmer. I am 78, with arthritis in both knees and a right shoulder that has not worked properly since the Reagan administration. My feet could not find ground. My hands could not find the air. The world blurred. Water pressed into my lungs. I thought, so this is how I die. Not in bed, not in peace, not in the arms of loved ones, but in silence, in cold, with the echo of mockery being the last voice I ever heard. But life is a stubborn thing. So am I. Somewhere above the surface, a voice broke through. "Oh my God, Marlene?" Strong arms reached into the water, a splash, a curse, then finally, breath. I choked, coughed until it felt like my lungs would split in half. I opened my eyes to blurry light, and then to the face of my old friend Cheryl, her hair gray like mine, her jaw clenched in fury. "They left you there?" she demanded, looking past me toward the opposite shore. "They just left you?" I nodded, just barely. Cheryl had been driving past the lake on her way back from a late grocery run. She said something told her to pull over when she thought she saw a figure bobbing in the water. Thank God she listened to that something. She got me to her car, wrapped me in a blanket, and took me straight to her house, not the hospital. I begged her not to. I was not ready for anyone to know I had survived, not yet. As I sat trembling in her living room, sipping tea with shaky hands, the evening played back through my mind like a cruel cartoon. That voice, that laugh, "Do not pretend, old hag, it's just water." But the thing is, it was never just water. 3 weeks earlier, my life had been different. Still painful, but in a quieter way. After my daughter died in a car accident 2 years ago, her only child, Savannah, insisted I move in. "We'll take care of each other," she said. I believed her. Savannah was 29, newly famous on the internet for her self-care with sass videos. She had over 300,000 followers on TikTok and called herself a wellness realist. But wellness, I learned, did not extend to the people who actually lived with her. Her home had pristine white walls, marble countertops, a yoga room, and not a single photograph of her mother, my daughter, anywhere. I was given the guest room on the first floor. "You're lucky," Savannah said on day one. "My upstairs is off limits. It's for recording." I nodded. I did not want to interfere. I was there to grieve, to help, to feel needed. Instead, I became invisible. "You can help around the house," she said, "just little things." Little things became everything. Cooking, cleaning, folding laundry I was not allowed to use. I was the only one who scrubbed the sink after her turmeric smoothies stained it yellow. One afternoon, I misplaced the key to the extra fridge in the garage, the one she used for her health drinks and fruit shots. I was flustered. Savannah rolled her eyes and said to her phone, live on video, "What's the use of living so long when you forget where you even are?" Thousands of her viewers laughed. She looked straight at me afterward and added, "Relax, it's content." I began to dread her filming days, which meant I dreaded every day. Once, she shoved a camera in my face and whispered, "Pretend to fall down the stairs, quick, it's for awareness, we'll say it's a PSA." I refused. She pouted, then said, "You're like a ghost with chores." At dinner parties, she introduced me as her mom's mom and waved her hand like I was a piece of furniture she inherited. No one asked me questions. No one noticed when I left the table. I was just the old woman in the corner, the kind who used to have stories, but now only had silence. I missed my daughter every day, and the girl who carried her blood had turned cold. I started keeping a notebook, not of poems or memories, but of the things she said to me when no one was listening. Things like, "If you die on a Monday, wait until Friday to be buried. I need a weekend post. Old people are like expired coupons. They used to be helpful. Now they're just clutter. You should be honored I'm making you relevant. One night I sat on the porch and watched her film a fake breakup with her boyfriend for views. She cried into the camera, then laughed when it turned off. "This is art," she said. "This is a performance," and I thought, I used to perform. But not like this. I had been on real stages. I had worn real costumes, delivered lines that meant something. I gave all that up when I had my daughter, Savannah's mother, and I never regretted it. Until now. Because now I saw what filled the stage I left behind: lies, cruelty, and cameras. Then came the lake. That day she said, "Let's have a family outing, something wholesome." I did not argue. I wanted to believe her. The sun was low, the water was gold, and then I was in it, sinking, thinking, my own blood did this. But Cheryl pulled me out. And now, as I sit wrapped in her blanket, my heart still pounding, I understand something new. They left me to drown, but I did not drown. I rose, and I will not go quietly again. I was not always a shadow in someone else's house. Once, I stood in the center of the spotlight. I was 21 the first time I heard applause that didn't come from family or friends or pity. It was real. It came from strangers who had watched me transform into someone else on stage, then rise back out of character like a phoenix in lipstick and heels. That was my first lead role, Blanche Dubois, Tennessee Williams, Community Theater, in Eugene, Oregon. American writer, Eugene, Oregon. But to me, it was Broadway. I was good. Not great, not yet, but I had something that other girls didn't. I knew how to bleed without flinching. I had the kind of voice that cracked in just the right places, and the kind of eyes that memorized pain. Directors said I was the kind of actress who makes people remember their own regrets. I lived for curtain calls, for stage makeup, for the smell of old velvet and stale coffee in the wings, for the way a monologue could land like a slap or a kiss, depending on how you delivered the last word. But then came the phone call. I was pregnant. The father, a man with piano hands and a wandering mouth, vanished within a week. He said something about freedom and then never answered again. I had a choice, and like most women in my generation, I didn't call it that. I left the theater. I packed away my headshots. I sold my costume jewelry for diapers and formula. My daughter, Meredith, was born on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of February. She didn't cry much. Just looked at me with these dark, knowing eyes, like she already suspected I had given up something large for her. And I had. But I never resented her. I took a job at a small grocery store in town, stocking shelves at night and cashiering in the morning. I breastfed in between shifts. I sang lullabies with a voice that used to carry across auditoriums. When Meredith turned 4, I brought her to a school play. A girl was dressed like a tree and forgot her line. I laughed, not cruelly, just from the place inside me that remembered being that girl once. Meredith looked at me and whispered, "I don't get what's so funny." As she got older, she never seemed interested in who I had been before her. Once she found an old program from a play I starred in and said, "Oh, is this like a scrapbook or something?" Then tossed it on the coffee table and never looked again. She was bright, logical, practical, the kind of girl who did her homework early and saved receipts. When she got into college, I wanted to send her off with something special, so I auditioned secretly for a local production and got a role, one night only. I didn't tell her until the day of the show. "I'm in a play tonight," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She blinked at me. "Why?" I didn't know how to answer. She didn't come. Said she had midterms. Said it was silly at your age. That phrase stayed with me. At your age. As if age disqualified passion. As if motherhood was a contract that voided everything you were before. When Meredith had Savannah, I offered to babysit full-time. I sang lullabies again, changed diapers again. I watched as my granddaughter became everything her mother had once been, only colder. Savannah didn't ask about my past either. If she saw my old photos, she'd squint and say things like, "You used to be kind of dramatic, huh?" And whenever I showed emotion, sadness, frustration, even joy, I heard it. There she goes again, the family drama queen. It became a joke, a way to minimize me. If I cried at a funeral, it was because I missed the attention. If I got quiet at dinner, it was because I wanted to guilt-trip them. If I ever dared to talk about my past, I was fishing for relevance. Even when Meredith died, my only child, they whispered behind my back, "Of course she's wailing, that's what she does." But what they didn't understand was this. I didn't cry because I was dramatic. I cried because I lost my daughter. I cried because I gave up everything to raise her. I cried because now, the only person left with my blood was someone who treated me like expired milk. Savannah used to film me without telling me. She'd catch me staring out the window and post it with captions like, "Grandma reliving her high school playdays again." One time, when I spilled soup on the floor and tried to clean it up with my shaky hands, she filmed that too. Said she'd post it as a PSA for elder care, but edited it with clown music. I started locking my door at night. I started writing letters I never sent, to Meredith, to my younger self, to nobody. And every time Savannah said something cruel, something cutting, something that sounded like a line from a script no one asked her to perform, I just added it to the silent monologue I had been rehearsing for years. They thought I was weak because I chose love over legacy, but they forgot what I used to be. A woman who could stand under lights and hold an entire room in silence. A woman who knew how to deliver an ending. And now, maybe, just maybe, it was time for one more performance. Not on stage, not in costume, but in truth. And this time, I would not let them cut the scene short. It was supposed to be Family Day. At least, that is what the handmade sign said, crooked letters taped to the wall in pastel blue and yellow. There were balloons, a folding table covered in store-bought cookies, and a Bluetooth speaker pumping out a playlist of nostalgia hits that Savannah downloaded 15 minutes before guests arrived. I had spent the morning slicing fruit, the afternoon setting chairs. I thought, maybe today will be different. Savannah even said thank you. That should have tipped me off. By 6:00 p.m., the backyard was full. Neighbors, followers, other young influencers wearing ironic t-shirts and expensive sneakers. I tried to keep my distance, standing near the drink table like a friendly ghost. At 6:23 p.m., Savannah clapped her hands and yelled, "Okay, everyone, time for a little viral moment." I saw her boyfriend raise his phone. Someone else grabbed a tripod. She turned to me, beaming like it was prom night. "Grandma," she said sweetly, "come sit here, right in the center." I should have known, but part of me still hoped, so I sat. They brought out a cake. Not for me, not for anyone, just a prop. Then Savannah pulled out a bag of cornstarch. "Let's go viral," she announced as the cameras rolled. "Fake a grandma stroke and see who cries first." People laughed. I didn't understand. Then she dumped the powder on my face, my mouth, my eyes. I couldn't breathe. Someone shrieked, "Oh my God, she's seizing!" Another shouted, "Call 911, no, film it first." The camera zoomed in. I reached up, coughing, blinking, trying to wipe my eyes. My heart pounded. My chest tightened. It wasn't just the prank. It was the shock. The betrayal. The humiliation. I heard Savannah's voice, gleeful and loud. "Act, Grandma, come on, give us a monologue. Isn't that what you always wanted?" Laughter. Everywhere. Even the kids, even the people I thought might object. I tried to stand. My legs buckled. I grabbed the edge of the table and whispered, "Please, stop." Savannah leaned close so only I could hear. "We gave you a stage," she hissed. "Now act. Isn't that what you've been dying for? The spotlight?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat burned. My dignity cracked. Then someone pushed play on a song. Another one bites the dust. More laughter. Phones filming, hashtags forming before my face was even clean. I walked away. Not quickly, not dramatically, just away, to the far end of the yard. I sat on a bench behind a rose bush. No one followed. I watched the powder crust on my sweater, watched my hands tremble. I had endured many things in my life. Poverty, loss, loneliness, but nothing quite like this. This was cruelty disguised as content. This was mockery camouflaged as modern fun. This was my blood, my family, telling the world that I was a joke, and they would never let me forget it. For the rest of the party, no one asked if I was okay. Savannah came over once, laughing. "People loved it. We're already at 20,000 views. You're trending, Grandma." I didn't answer. She shrugged. If you're gonna mope, do it off camera. That night I washed the cornstarch from my hair in the upstairs guest bathroom. I wasn't supposed to go up there, but I didn't care. I looked in the mirror. My face was pale, older than I remembered. My eyes were tired but not dead. I whispered to my reflection, "They think I'm weak." Then I took a breath. But they forgot I know how to finish a scene. I didn't sleep much that night, but I started planning. And I never looked at Savannah the same again. The lake trip was Savannah's idea. She said it would be a chill content day, some kind of cottagecore aesthetic to balance her usual edgy videos. "We'll shoot some reels," she said. "Maybe a paddleboard bit, some drone shots, cute grandma moments too, if you're feeling photogenic." I packed sandwiches. No one ate them. The sun was soft that afternoon, gold dripping through pine trees, warm against my skin. I wandered to the far side of the lake, where the grass met a crumbling dock and ducks floated like tiny ghosts. I sat down on a smooth rock, careful of my hip, and just breathed. For a moment, I forgot where I was, not because of age or confusion, but because peace still lived somewhere deep inside me, and the lake knew how to call it up. I closed my eyes. That was my mistake. I didn't hear her footsteps until it was too late. Savannah's voice came, low and playful, like a joke whispered into a microphone. "Want to know if arthritis floats?" And then, two hands, familiar hands, shoved hard between my shoulders. The cold hit first, then the silence, then the burning rush of water up my nose, into my throat, into every memory I had ever tried to protect. I flailed. My arms found nothing. My body twisted and sank. Under the surface, time disappeared. I remembered my daughter's first cry. I remembered standing center stage in a red silk dress. I remembered the first time I held Savannah, tiny and perfect and full of promise. I remembered love. And then I remembered hate. I kicked. Hard. My lungs screamed. I surfaced once, just enough to hear laughter. Phone cameras. Holy crap, we actually did it! She went down like a rock, then fading footsteps. They left. They actually left. No one called out. No one came back. They just walked away, leaving me floating in the middle of that lake like a forgotten prop. My legs cramped, my vision blurred. I began to sink again. And then, "Marlene?" The voice was sharp, urgent, human. A splash followed, and strong arms cut through the water. I felt myself being pulled upward, my chest heaving against the weight of the lake. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on the grass, coughing water out of my lungs, a flannel wrapped tightly around me. Cheryl's face hovered above mine, lined with worry, burning with anger. "They left you there?" she demanded. I could not answer, only nod, but in that nod lay all the truth she needed. Cheryl Monroe, my old scene partner from the Eugene Playhouse. We hadn't spoken in years. She had moved away, remarried, retired, but there she was, still with that fiery gray hair and lipstick too red for her age, just like me. She said she was driving past on her way to the grocery store when she saw the figures by the lake. "I thought I recognized you, but by the time I parked, they were gone and you were—" Her voice cracked. "You could have died." I coughed. Hard. Salt and shame burned in my throat. But something else stirred too. Not anger, not grief. Resolve. I touched her hand. "They think I did," I said. And then, for the first time in weeks, I smiled. They thought I was gone. 3 weeks. That is how long I stayed dead. Cheryl brought me home that night. Not to Savannah's house, no. To her own cabin 2 towns over, nestled behind a cluster of trees and shielded from cell towers and suspicion. She lent me clothes, cooked me soup, sat with me in silence while I shivered through the nights, waking from dreams of drowning and betrayal. She never asked for the whole story. She just looked at me, placed a hand on mine, and said, "We're going to play this like a proper act, scene by scene. When you're ready, we'll light the final curtain." I nodded, and I began to write. I wrote down every word Savannah had said the past year. I listed every time she filmed me without consent, every moment she used me as a prop for her audience, and then I opened a new file on Cheryl's old laptop, labeled simply Proof. We dug. We scrolled through Savannah's public posts. We found the cornstarch video, over 3.4 million views now. People thought it was staged. Of course it was. They just did not know the real pain underneath it. Then it happened. Day 21 of my death. Savannah went live on Instagram. She wore black. Her eyes were puffy, probably rubbed, not cried. She held up a framed photo of me. A photo she had taken secretly, where I was asleep on the porch, mouth slightly open. She used it for sympathy. We lost someone really special, she sniffled. My grandma, she passed suddenly, slipped at the lake. It's been so hard. Tears. Crocodile. Perfect lighting. She wiped her cheek and continued, we've set up a memorial fund. Anything you can give would mean the world. The comments poured in. She was so funny in your vids. Just donated $25.00. I miss her and I never even met her. I watched it all from Cheryl's laptop. We sat in the dark. Her eyes narrowed. People are buying it, I said quietly. Not for long, she replied. That night we contacted a lawyer. A real one this time. Cheryl still had connections from her brief stint on a legal drama in the 90s. Turns out some of her fake lawyer friends had become real ones. I sent them screenshots, voice memos, even the text Savannah had sent her boyfriend after pushing me. LMAO, she flopped like a fish, but it was not enough. We needed something bigger, something public. That is when Cheryl said, let's make them feel what they made you feel. Humiliated, exposed, forgotten, but we do it with class. She reached out to an old producer friend who now ran a streaming series called Shamestream, a viral docu-series that exposed influencers, con artists, and toxic families. They called me 2 days later. We set up a meeting. I told my story, I brought my receipts, I let them hear Savannah's voice, laughing while I cried, mocking while I coughed. They were silent. Then they said, we want to feature you. The episode will air live in 2 weeks. I nodded. Make sure it airs the same night she hits 50K in donations. They laughed. You really were an actress, huh? No, I said. I still am. 2 weeks later, Shamestream aired its newest episode, The Grandmother They Buried Alive. It opened with a montage, shaky iPhone footage of me stumbling with powder on my face, blinking into the sun, then stumbling again, this time into cold black water. The scene froze just as I disappeared beneath the surface. Cut to a voiceover. Mine. Calm, composed. They thought I was too old to matter, too tired to fight, too easy to erase. Then came the receipts. Clips Savannah never thought I'd saved. Her mocking me behind closed doors. Old hag's finally gone, she whispered one night, curled up in a blanket with her boyfriend. That's $2,000, 0 cents a month I get to keep. Then, the fake eulogy, the crocodile tears. The donation tally flashed on the screen like a game show counter. $50,000, $238, 0 cents. More than $50,000 raised on the back of my so-called death. And not a single tear of hers was real. She wore white this time, said it symbolized peace. As she hit start stream, 3 men walked into frame, 2 uniformed officers and 1 man in a gray suit. They read her rights, live, in real time, to 14,000 viewers. Someone clipped the moment and uploaded it. It hit 1 million views in 5 hours. Savannah tried to deny everything. This is a setup. She was already sick. She faked everything. But then they played the clip again. Her voice. Her laugh. That sentence. Let's go viral, fake a grandma stroke and see who cries first. She was taken in. Charged with elder abuse, fraud, and obstruction. The next week, I stood in court. She was seated across from me in a jumpsuit, too bright for the room. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I wore navy, hair pulled back, straight spine, no trembling. The judge gave me the floor. I walked up, heels clicking, slow and steady. I turned to Savannah. You pushed me into water, I said. My voice didn't shake. I rose. I took 1 step closer. Now sink in your own lies. I didn't cry. She did, but not for me. Not for what she'd done, only for what she'd lost. Her sponsors dropped her within hours. Her channel was demonetized. And the memorial fund? Frozen and returned. Every dollar. The first invitation came from a local radio show, then the newspaper, then a national morning talk show. By the time Good Morning Portland aired my story, the phrase "push back grandma" was trending across 4 states. I had no PR agent, no team, no stylists. Just me, my voice, my story. They dressed me in soft blue and gave me tea I did not drink. The host leaned forward, all syrup and sympathy. "Tell us, Marlene, how did it feel to finally be seen?" I took a breath, looked into the camera. "They said I craved attention," I said, letting the words settle. Maybe I did. But now the spotlight shines where it belongs, on their cruelty. Silence, then applause. The clip made rounds, edited, remixed, even turned into a spoken word piece by a college performance group. People wrote to me, women from nursing homes, caregivers, estranged mothers. Some said thank you. Some said I thought I was the only one. I wrote back to each of them. Meanwhile, Savannah sat in a halfway house, serving 6 months of monitored detention. She was banned from live streaming, stripped of her partnerships, and ordered to take courses in elder care and ethics. She tried to apologize. A letter, a voicemail. I read them. I did not reply. Instead, I turned my attention to something else. An old colonial house on the edge of town, previously under contract by Savannah. She was going to use it for a content studio. Savannah House, the logo draft had said, but with her funds frozen and her credit ruined, the deal fell through. I bought it. Cash. No one saw that coming. We renovated it, painted the shutters soft gray, refinished the floors, turned the master suite into a small theater space, velvet curtains, a thrifted spotlight, 10 chairs in a semicircle. I named it The Stage for Survivors. It was not just a care home. It was a sanctuary. A space where women who had been dismissed, discarded, or digitally humiliated could come together and reclaim their voices. We hosted story nights, monologue circles, silent dinners where no one had to perform politeness. One woman said, "I haven't heard my own voice out loud in years." Another brought her daughter to listen. I taught a class, Breath, Truth, and Presence. Not acting, not exactly, just remembering who we were before they told us to be quiet. One evening, after a performance of Letters Never Mailed, I stood outside the house, watching the last guest leave. The moon was bright, the porch light flickered. Cheryl stood beside me, arms crossed. "You did it," she said. I nodded. "We did," she smiled. "So what's next?" I looked at the house, the window with warm light, the laughter still echoing. "Next," I whispered, "we keep the stage open." The sentencing took place on a rainy Tuesday. Savannah sat in the courtroom, shoulders hunched, her once perfect manicure chipped down to the beds. No ring light, no filters, no applause buttons, just 4 walls, a gavel, and truth. The judge read the terms aloud. 6 months monitored detention, 5 years probation, prohibited from monetizing online content or engaging in live stream activities, mandatory participation in psychological counseling and elder care training, permanent severance from all current brand contracts. Savannah didn't cry this time. She looked at me once, and I saw it. Not remorse, but recognition. She finally understood that I wasn't going away, that the woman she pushed into a lake came back not just breathing, but burning. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave no interviews, just a short statement. She tried to drown me in shame, but I swam back in truth. That clip went viral again, not from rage or shock this time, but from catharsis. Justice had a face now, and it looked like mine. 3 months later, I hosted our first open mic night at the Stage for Survivors. No cameras, no phones, just chairs in a circle, warm tea, a battered piano in the corner. The youngest woman was 52, the oldest 91. Each one had a story. Some whispered, some shouted, all heard. When it was my turn, I walked to the center and stood beneath the soft spotlight, the same one Cheryl and I had found at a yard sale and patched with tape. I held no script, only memory. I was raised to be quiet, I began, to make space, to not demand attention, and when I did speak, when I dared to perform, I was called dramatic, emotional, unstable. Laughter. Knowing, soft. I continued. They said I should be grateful to be kept, that a roof and a bed meant I owed them silence. Pause. But silence is not safety. And shame is not a blanket. It never warms, it only weighs. The room was still. So I finished with the only line that truly mattered. They tried to drown me in shame, but I swam back in truth. Applause, not wild, not forced, but real. One woman reached for my hand afterward and said, "You made me brave." Another whispered, "I didn't think anyone would ever believe me." That night, after the last teacup was washed and the lights dimmed, I stood on the porch, watching the stars flicker over Oregon's dark sky. The house behind me hummed with quiet strength. I had no followers, no subscribers, but I had a stage, and for the first time in a very long time, I knew I would never be erased again. I used to think my story would end quietly, tucked away in some forgotten room with a stack of unpaid bills and an obituary nobody clipped. That was how I imagined old age, not a triumph, not a reckoning, just fading. But I was wrong. Life has a way of dragging you back into the light, even when you have been shoved into the water, even when your lungs still burn with the memory of drowning. Months passed after Savannah's sentencing, and my life took on a rhythm I never thought possible again. Mornings began with the shuffle of slippers across polished wood floors in the house I'd bought, the same house she once bragged would be her content palace. Now, it was filled with the laughter of women who had been discarded, ignored, or silenced. We brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead and sat together at the kitchen table, swapping stories. Not for views, not for likes, for survival. Afternoons belonged to workshops. Some women wrote letters they never sent. Others painted or sang songs they had not dared to sing in decades. I taught them breathwork, stage tricks, really, how to project your voice, how to stand tall even when you feel small. It was not acting, though some called it that. It was remembering. Evenings were magic. We gathered in the small theater room under the glow of that thrifted spotlight, 10 chairs filled with 10 souls who finally had an audience. They read poetry, they told the truth. Sometimes they just wept, and we clapped anyway, because tears too are a kind of performance, and every performance deserves applause. I was not just surviving anymore. I was curating a second act. One night, after an especially raw performance by a woman who had spent 40 years married to a man who called her worthless, I stood outside on the porch, watching the sky bleed into midnight. Cheryl joined me, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "You know," she said, "we could take this further." "Further?" I asked. "Not just a house, a movement. There are so many like us, Marlene. Invisible women, drama queens, nags, burdens. What if we gave them all a stage?" Her words settled in me like seeds. The next week, I received a letter. It came from a university in Portland, inviting me to speak at a symposium on digital ethics and elder abuse. Apparently, my ShameStream episode had made its way into classrooms. Students were dissecting it as a case study. Professors were arguing about performance versus exploitation, truth versus spectacle. Me, a 78-year-old grandmother who had once been mocked as expired milk, now a subject of academic debate. I accepted. When I stood at that podium, staring out at rows of young faces glowing under fluorescent light, I thought of Savannah, of the way she once used her camera to strip me of dignity. Now here I was, using my voice to put dignity back on the table. My granddaughter said I was a ghost with chores, I began. But let me tell you, ghosts do not vanish. They haunt. And sometimes haunting is just another word for justice. The room erupted. Not in laughter, but in thunderous, knowing applause. That moment lit something in me. Over the next months, invitations flooded in. Radio interviews, podcasts, even a request to collaborate on a book. At first I resisted. I told myself I was not seeking fame, but then I remembered how they used to sneer, "She just wants attention." Maybe I did. But this time I wanted it for the right reasons. So I said yes. I told my story again and again. Not because it gave me pleasure to relive the cruelty, but because every time I spoke, another woman wrote to me. Letters arrived daily. "My children don't call me anymore. I thought I was useless. Thank you for showing me I am not. My granddaughter makes fun of me online. I never thought anyone else knew what that felt like. You gave me courage." My mother died in silence. I wish she had had your stage. I read every letter, I replied when I could, and when I couldn't, I kept them all in a shoebox labeled proof that I lived. But with the spotlight came shadows. Savannah's followers, what was left of them, sent me hate mail. "You ruined her life," they wrote. "She just made mistakes. You're bitter. You wanted revenge." I didn't answer them. Not because they were right, but because I had already answered, in my living, in my surviving, in the women who now stood taller because I refused to sink. Still, there were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if I had gone too far, if vengeance had outweighed healing. Then I would hear the echo of that night at the lake, her laughter, the cold water, the silence of their footsteps walking away, and I knew I had not gone far enough. Because cruelty has a long echo, but so does justice. 1 year after my so-called death, we held the first annual Survivors Gala at the Stage for Survivors. Women came from across the state. Gray hair, shaky knees, strong hearts. Some came in wheelchairs, others with canes. All came with stories. We transformed the old house into a palace of light. Candles in the windows, ribbons across the walls. The tiny stage dressed in velvet and lace. When it was my turn to speak, I looked out at their faces. Faces that had been dismissed, overlooked, mocked. Faces that now glowed under the attention they deserved. They said we were too old to matter, I told them. Too weak to fight. Too invisible to be seen. But look around. This room is proof. Proof that survival is not just breathing, it's shining. Applause shook the walls. Tears fell like rain. For a moment, I thought the roof itself might lift, and in that moment, I knew I had found my true curtain call. Not in theaters, not on TikTok, but here, in a house of women who refused to disappear. Savannah never showed up again. Not at my door, not in my inbox. She moved to another state after her probation ended, I heard, tried to start over. Maybe she succeeded, maybe she didn't. I no longer cared. Because my story was not about her anymore. It was about me. It was about all of us. Sometimes I walk back to the lake, alone. The water looks the same, but I do not. I stand at the edge, breathing in the air, and whisper, "You didn't take me." Then I turn back toward the life I rebuilt. Legacy is not in bloodlines. Legacy is in courage, and mine is just beginning. If you felt this story, if you believe no cruelty should ever go unspoken, then subscribe to Grandma True Stories, because I am not finished, and the next story may be yours. F.